Hello, everyone. Welcome to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the Advertising and Marketing Manager for HGA, and I get to be your host today. Today, our episode is sponsored by the Des Moines Weavers and Spinners Guild out of Des Moines, Iowa. We appreciate them sponsoring Textiles and Tea today, and really do enjoy having the guilds be sponsorships of our programs. As always, we will take questions, but we ask that you put them in the Q&A and not in the chat. Love your comments in the chat, but I can see the questions better if they're in the Q&A. Today, we have Deborah Silver. Deborah graduated from the Cleveland Institute of Art. Her work has been shown in many national juried exhibitions and has received numerous awards, including first place and the Award for Excellence in Complex Weavers Complexity 2018. In 2019, she published The Technique of Split Shed Weaving, and we'll talk a lot about that today. This book was for four-shaft weavers, illustrating the split shed weaving process and the many structures that can be woven with this method. She is a 2015 recipient of the Cleveland Jewish Arts and Culture Fellowship Grant and the winner of the 2019 Ohio Arts Council Individual Excellence Award. Deborah teaches split shed weaving workshops and continues to create beautiful handwoven art. Hey, Deborah.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
It's good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
All right.
I mean, this is so bizarre because I'm like, who would ever want to talk to me here?
Lots of people. So what is your favorite tea?
Generally my favorite tea is coffee. Except at night I will have herbal tea sometimes, and I love green tea with sushi.
All right, a good coffee drinker. So share with us how you got started in fibers.
I really didn't have much interest in fiber, except I did a lot of macrame when I was younger, and of course I had a potholder loom. I didn't get into weaving, and I had no interest in weaving at all. When I got into college, I had done a lot of silk screen in high school, and I thought I would do silk screening or printmaking or graphic arts when I got into college. It turned out that at Cleveland Institute of Art at that time, the printmaking department was very kind of snotty about silk screening. They were more into lithography and intaglio, but right across the hall in the fiber department, they were doing lots of silk screening. They were just doing it on fabric instead of paper. So I thought maybe I need to be a fiber major. And then I went over there, and I was supposed to do weaving my first year as a fiber major, but I didn't really want to do weaving. So I ended up sitting in somebody else's class that was at the same time as weaving, and nobody said anything. So I stayed there for the rest of the year, and then they practically had to tie me to a loom. So I would learn to weave the next year. And it was always this sort of love-hate relationship with weaving, because I thought it was too constrictive. You know, there was too many rules. There was the vertical and the horizontal, and you were restricted by the blocks, number of shafts. So I was always kind of fighting it. At the same time, I did become an addict. So it was a real love-hate thing.
Well, good thing for us, because you are well known for the split shed weaving technique. How did you come across that? I mean, was it something you just made up, or you were taught, or?
No, I was looking for different ways of sort of breaking out of having the blocks. And I had an 8-shaft loom. This is what a split shed looks like. It's basically just a layer of warp that's between the upper and the lower shed. So you have 2 sheds now, and whether or not you want to see more or less weft, you just kind of float your skinny shuttle in and out of that middle layer. And you can do it with lots of different weave structures. How I came across it was through an article in Weavers magazine that Jane Evans wrote. And she's like my guru. It was split shed tied Bidervant, which is extended summer and winter. And it showed a 2-color weave structure. It didn't have the blended colors like I do, but it was the same structure. And I was like, oh, this is what I've been looking for all this time, because I had been doing a lot of different things where, like, I was putting my shuttle through and then pulling it out and then changing my treadling and putting my shuttle back in, so that I could try to weave shapes. And this was just this big shortcut that really just opened up so many things for me. So that's how it all started. And there was these few articles. Peter Collingwood actually mentions it in his rug weaving book.
Huh.
But there's one woman, her last name is Rasmussen, who did write a book. It's in Swedish. So, but there's a lot of really cool stuff in there, if you can read Swedish. And she even has things for 8 shafts. So that was the beginning.
Well, when you were at the Cleveland Institute of Art, your focus was on fiber and drawing too, right? Did you study drawing?
Yes, I was a drawing minor.
Uh-huh.
But really the thing that I think really contributed to my design aesthetic is the silk screening, because it forces you to congeal your image down into as few colors as possible, because every time you add a color, you have to design a new screen and repeat the process over again and make sure everything's lined up perfectly. So it's kind of the same thing with the split shed weaving, because most of them you can't mix more than 2 colors together, so it's that aesthetic.
Yeah, we have a couple of images right here of which looks like your combination of weaving and drawing, or weaving and silk printing. These 2 images are just gorgeous. So do you think that's why it was appealing to you, because you could actually draw in weaving?
Yes, because, and I know you could do tapestry. It's just, to me, I really was interested in playing with weave structure too. And tapestry, you're kind of a little more restricted to mostly plain weave. I mean, you can do different things, but I just thought it was too. I really wanted to be able to do selvage to selvage weaving and still be able to have imagery on 4 shafts, because I'm really selfish. I want it all.
What's the advantage to selvage for people who don't know what you quite mean by that? What's the advantage?
It's not that there's an advantage or a disadvantage, except for, if you've ever seen somebody weaving tapestry, a lot of times you'll have a lot of teeny tiny bobbins floating around. This, you have, however many colors are in that row, you just have those shuttles and they're going all the way continuous back and forth. It's just a different way of weaving.
Mm-hmm. Well, the next works we're going to look at have American Indian imagery in them. When and how did you get interested in that?
Well, it started with me being interested in tribal art that had faces, a lot with masks, or just any kind of sculpture that had any kind of a face on it, that, like, really, I just love the emotions that are that come out of these things. A lot of them that are used in ceremony. And I was just really interested in that interplay of having a human face with a tribal image, because when I first started, I was just doing one face, and one face is an emotion. We respond to it as an emotion. But when you get 2 faces together in one image, it suddenly becomes a conversation. There's this narrative, there's this push and pull between the 2 images. And I was really into that. And then, I was doing a lot of studying of our archaeological digs, and, I was on all those different archaeological pages, and I started really getting into cave paintings and petroglyphs, which are just the oldest form of record keeping, really, of storytelling. And I really love that idea of, like, this simple kind of storytelling. And the difference between a cave painting and a petroglyph is, a cave painting, it's painted right on the surface of whatever the wall is. Petroglyphs are scratched in. Often, like if it's inside of a cave, it's maybe where there was a fire and there was a lot of soot on the wall, and then you'd scrape the image out from the soot.
Oh, okay.
And I like that idea of scraping in to going lower, and that whole archaeological dig thing of getting lower and lower in civilization and finding out more and more things. And I had a lot of weavings that I didn't think were finished. And, you know, it's like anathema for us to want to cut into a weaving. So these things were sitting around sometimes for years, but I wasn't showing them. I didn't think they were done. And, you know, sometimes you have to sit with something for a while before you say, okay, I'm going to get out the knives, the scissors, you know. And these, where you see the imagery, the petroglyph imagery, that is literally cut through. Those are holes that are cut into the weaving. First, I put fusible interfacing on the back to kind of try to hold it together. These are really dense weavings though, so they're still about 1/8 of an inch thick, so they still wanted to fray. And I right away, after I cut it, painted those inside edges with acrylic paint that acted like a glue to keep it from fraying. And then I backed the fabric with other fabrics, so where you see the design. So I was trying to sort of tell a story. The image on the left is a kabuki mask. And kabuki theater is one of those things that's really cool to look at, but I have no idea what's going on. Just absolutely none. So I put this petroglyph with it to sort of make my own story out of it. So that's why it's called Man, Snake, Wolf, Grass. It's about a man and a snake and a wolf in the grass. The one on the right side is actually a self-portrait from a drawing that my husband did of me. He's an artist too. And the petroglyph just hit me. I just love that this petroglyph was a warrior that looks like it's wearing earrings. And I just thought, you know, I ever go into battle, I'm putting on my earrings. So it's just a silly thing.
So you kind of backing up to how you got involved in this, is this something you studied in school, or it's just an interest that you pursued on your own?
It's something I pursued on my own.
Okay. Well, it's an amazing combination. And another amazing combination of these next images, this is a technique that gives something of a three-dimensional appearance, and it's called piqué. So can you talk about piqué in general, and then these works in specific for you?
Well, piqué really is a three-dimensional cloth. It's like it quilts itself. And how I came up with this is when I decided that I was going to start doing sampling and seeing how much I could do on 4-shaft or split shed weaving. So I started going through and researching all these different weave structures, a lot of them that I had never woven before. And I had taken a look at piqué and said, no, as if this won't work. And I had been posting a lot of things, and David Zanek has commented, you must try piqué. It's magical. And I said, all right, I'll look at it again. So I said, okay, I'm going to really give this a go. And I did a sample and I put it in the washing machine and dried it, and it puffed up beautifully. And I said, oh my God, it's magical. He's right. What piqué is, it's a double cloth where you have a backing cloth and a face cloth. Like they never change layers like a regular double cloth. But the backing cloth, the warps will come up and grab the upper cloth and stitch that together in places. Or where it's not stitched, it can puff up. And what helps it puff up is there's this invisible puffy weft that goes throughout the whole piece called a stuffer or a water weft. And so if you're using a backing warp that's really shrinkable like wool, and it's not as shrinkable on the face cloth, that backing weft will just squeeze everything in those stitched areas, and where it's puffy, it'll get extra puffy. So that's piqué. In this particular piece, there's 3 areas. There's a stitched area where you see those little dots. That's that backing warp. And then there's the stuffed areas that are the puffy areas. And where you see the horizontal ribs, that's all Robin Spady's fault. Because I'm a lazy weaver. I try to get as much out of one warp as I can because I hate warping. And so in an issue of Heddlecraft last year, she had, it was all cord weaves. And there was a turned Bedford cord that I noticed that the wefts and the type of wefts in it were the same as in PK, and that I could make the warp similar. So I could make 3 different areas instead of just 2 areas of cloth. So where you see those horizontal ridges, that's the backing weft that you would normally never see coming up and pulling the cloth down into these ridges. Where it's super puffy, like where the leaves are, I did have to add extra, like stuffing in from the back because there's only so much you can get out of a stuffer weft. But I'm really happy with the piece. It's from a mausoleum window at the cemetery near where I live. The photograph, let's see, it was a wrought iron window, like it had wrought iron in front of stained glass. Plus there was reflection. And so I'm taking this thing that has all these colors and, wrought iron and trying to make it into something that's almost colorless, that's just texture. So the reason I was cursing out Robin Spady is because it was so hard to keep track of because there was no color. It was just texture. But I'm happy with it.
It's beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful. Now we're also going to show another piece that's very 3-dimensional, and it to me it seems like it's kind of a step away from your normal work. This is even more 3-dimensional than the other, and what we've got on the left is a front view, and then on the right is more of a side view, so you can see that it is 3-4 inches deep. So can you talk about this work?
Yeah, so this is a very personal piece. It's based on a short story that I wrote about me and my father, who died when I was 17. Because it started out as something that was a written story, I wanted words to be a part of it. So I used, and also in the story, it references when I was a little girl, but also when I was in high school. So I wanted to put these, I used these alphabet blocks for the frame. So there's words that go all the way around the front and words around the sides too. And then it's split shed tied Bidervant is the weave structure. But because this frame is so nice and deep, I was able to make these steps that start off as one stairway and then splits off into 2. And you'll see those metal rods. Those rods are woven right into the piece. And then there's holes drilled inside the frame so that the stairs really go into the piece itself. And then there's like old photographs in the back and my baby's shoe. And and also those little alphabet beads are threaded onto the metal rods.
How big is this?
Not very big, about 18 by 18.
Oh, okay. I thought those were blocks. They're beads.
No, the beads those little silver beads are on the metal rods.
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes sense. Sorry.
Yeah, they are wooden blocks.
Okay. Now this next one, again, you just have all these different interests because this next group of works are bags. And now are these 3 split shed also?
Yes. Okay. Everything I do is split shed with 4 shafts.
Okay.
These I did after because I'm still experimenting. I was working on the book for a year and a half and I finally said I have to just go to print, but I'm still playing with different things that I'm still finding new things I can do. So the one on the left is tied Latvian and it's tied Latvian on one side and tied Lithuanian on the other. The imagery is from photographs that I took in Venice. architectural elements. And on the right, it's the 4 ancient elements. So it's earth, fire, wind, and air. And that is in a paired weft summer and winter on one side, and on the other side, it's a 4-tie twill.
Wow.
So it's a reversible bag.
Mm-hmm. And this is interesting because you do wall art as well as utilitarian work. And then you throw in that your work really has a personal meaning for you. Some of these pieces are very personal for you. So do you approach each of those differently?
I approach craft work a little bit differently in terms of like the functional stuff, like the bags. I don't worry so much about what's the message and what's my artistic statement going to be. I have a little bit more fun with it. Mostly the reason I've started doing more functional things and scarves and things is just, most of the people that are weavers are doing functional things, and I want to show them that there's a lot of applications you can use split shed weaving for besides just making art. You can have I've made a lot of really cool scarves. So it's just it's a different approach, but I don't think it's one's better or worse than the other. It's just, whatever you're into. It was really weird when I first got on social media because I was a little bit late getting on social media, and I'm like, ooh, weavers groups. So I'm going to post my stuff to weavers groups. We're all weavers. And I would get these comments like, this is art. I'd be like, hey, like I wasn't really thinking like most of these people are making functional things, because for me it's such a great community. Weavers in general, I think we're such a giving community, and we're so and believe me, I know a lot of artists in a lot of different fields, and there's not a lot of snobbishness among weavers, because unless you're doing something that's like super like jacquard woven type stuff, chances are it's been done before, or somebody did something like that before. There's not this weird proprietary thing you get with like ceramics artists that are like, no, you cannot know how I did this glaze. It's just more of a sharing community to me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, these pieces that we are showing right now, they're called Shibori, it's not Shibori, Sayori 1, Sayori 2, and Sayori 3. Now, if folks were at Spinning and Weaving Week last week, they may have participated in Mihoko's talk about Sayori, but if not, would you give a brief overview of what is Sayori and then why this triptych that you did, if I can call it that?
This was, and a lot of people kind of switched gears during the COVID lockdown because we had this like luxury called time that we don't normally have. And I used it to really try to play with some things that I hadn't played with before. And one of the things was, well, first of all, I had, how some people like cleaned out their garages, and some people like weeded their gardens and did like went through all their paperwork, or clean their basements.
Made bread.
I had a bag of embroidery floss, a garbage bag from when Woolworths closed, for over 20 years in my crawl space in my attic, because it was like, okay, they were all jumbled up together. They're only 9-yard long skeins. But I went through over 2 days and sorted all this embroidery floss. And then it was like, oh my God, I'm the kid with the biggest box of crayons in school. So, I wanted to play with this. And one of the things I wanted to play with it, because I don't normally work intuitively. I use a cartoon, everything's very planned out. And I wanted to try to play with that Sayori thing of just working intuitively and not having anything in mind, and not worrying about making mistakes, because there are no mistakes in Sayori. And I I would line my yarn up into like 2 different colorways and then attach it all together so that it was all just one long weft on each shuttle. And then it was just like, well, let's see how all these colors blend, because I had no idea. And these are all done on the same warp, but there's a lot you can do with just, these are all straight threading on 4 shafts, but like the one on the right is a warp versus weft face broken twill. The one in the middle is a weft face straight twill with a warp face broken twill background. And the one on the left is summer and winter. So those are all done without having to change any threading. It's just a matter of playing with the treadling. So I already forgot what the question was. Oh, the other thing is, so when you're doing mixing colors on split shed, what you're doing is you're keeping that split shed open for both colors. And wherever the color is in that upper shed, that's where you're going to see it. And wherever it's in the lower shed, you won't. You'll just see that background. So you can throw one color, and then before you change your treadling, throw another color, and that color can follow a completely different path. But where both of those colors are sharing that upper shed at the same time, you'll get another color. You'll get a third color, and it just happens. So that's really exciting. So you go from having, if you were just using one color in your weft, you'd have a 2-color design, warp versus weft face. But just by adding one more color, you now have a 4-color design across.
Now, how big are these? If these are embroidery floss, are those the ones behind you?
Yeah, they're about 15 inches across.
Huge for embroidery floss. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
I've got a lot of floss.
Okay, everybody, all of you who've been out there gathering floss, we are not the only ones. Deborah and I are not the only ones who have gathered up floss. Now we know what to do with it. So you talked some about COVID. Can you talk more about how COVID impacted on you and your work? Because I know you did some incredible work during that time.
Well, I was doing a lot of walking in this cemetery near where I live. It's a really big, beautiful old cemetery. It's called Lakeview Cemetery, and there's a lot of famous people buried there. John D. Rockefeller, President Garfield. There's an entire chapel there that was designed by Louis Tiffany. So all the mosaic on the walls is glass mosaic, and there's a gorgeous, stained glass, of course. So I did a lot of walking there because it's an English garden cemetery. So it's just absolutely beautiful, and it's huge. And that's where I got that mausoleum window picture. And I was just, after you start spending a lot of time, you start noticing a lot of things. And one of the things that I had noticed was that there's a lot of headstones that have women's names that don't have end dates. And a lot of it is because usually the man dies first and you get the tombstones at the same time. And for whatever reasons, these women who have to be long dead, there's no end date. And I said, and at first it was just kind of one of those weird things. And then I just kept noticing them, and then I decided I was going to start documenting them. And I'm about halfway through the cemetery, and I've got over 200 names. It's kind of crazy. And I love a good mystery. And what I love about mysteries is it's not solving the mystery to me. For me, because I'm kind of a storyteller, I like the idea of all the possibilities of what could have happened. So, you'll look at something, you'll see, and you'll notice, well, she was only 45 years old when her husband died, maybe she did this, that, and the other thing. And maybe she took that inheritance money and, started up her own business. And, as 21st century women, I think I'm going to start doing like a narrative of where I start giving people names and these dates and saying, what kind of future would you have hoped happened to her? You know, because, these are people who had dreams for their daughters, who had hopes that maybe things would be different, that they'd have more choices and, maybe be able to vote one day or, wear a skirt where you could see your ankles or, um, because we've spent so long chipping and chipping and chipping away at trying to get, more autonomy for women, and we're still doing it. And, it's just one of those things where I want to sort of honor these women and give them a second life. And I think I will have a narrative element to go with these names. I'm only using first names. And I'm combining it with these architectural elements from the cemetery. There's one particular memorial that I love. I call it Augustus's tomb because the guy's name is really Augustus. But it's really more of a family memorial where the sides have this cast iron, very fanciful design. And in the back, there's a big bronze plaque where this guy, Augustus, in 1925, he had written his own epitaph, and it's a poem called Dreamland about sort of like, what if after you died, you woke up and discovered that this was all a dream? And it's very philosophical. And so I'm going to call this piece, it's going to be 21 different pieces that all fit together, and I'm going to call it Dreamland. So yeah, this is literally on my loom right now. I've only got the first 6 done, and it is woven with embroidery floss wefts because I thought that was really important, because needlework was it was considered a respectable pastime for women then.
Yeah, I have several questions about this work, but first I need to make a comment that we met last Thursday, Wednesday, whatever. And before this meeting, she sent 2 more images. She's like, I got these done. It's like, oh my gosh, because somebody just commented that you work fast. You are progressing quite quickly. Yeah, you are. But the other thing I'm curious about is the colors. They're very soft. They look beautiful together. But why did you choose these colors unless you just had a lot of that floss? Was there another reason why?
Not really. I just love to play with color. My husband's a painter, and he usually helps me. I did this all on my own though. And there will be a lot more color in the this is like the center panel. So there'll be a panel on the right and one on the left, and there will be a little bit of a different colorway there. This is the first time I've put this much yardage. There's 12 yards on my loom right now. The warp's pearl cotton.
I just can't believe you did that with embroidery floss. That's amazing. It's truly amazing. So everybody in the chat, I've been kind of keeping an eye on it, have been talking about your book. So we're going to talk about your book now. You wrote a book. And I always ask people this because writing a book is a lot of work. And so why? Why did you say, I need to write a book about this?
Because so when I was in my late 30s, I went back to school to get a 2-year degree in electrical engineering with a specialty in biomedical instrumentation. And I worked for 10 years as a nuclear medicine and CT technician. Basically, they built CAT scans and PET scans, and I would test and calibrate them before they went to the hospitals. And then in 2018, early in 2018, I found out that I was going to be getting outsourced to China and that I was going to be losing my job. And, this whole time I had been weaving. And so here I was working at this job for 10 years that I had no passion for whatsoever, but, I'm good at math and science. So, it was good money. And I had made this decision when I started making art after I started working there that every single thing I make, I'm going to make for me. I'm not going to give a damn about where it's going to show, who's going to see it, what anybody's going to say about it. Because if I have to work at this job that I have no real love for, then I'm going to just make art that's for me. And eventually I had enough stuff that I started showing work and people actually did like it. And then people started wanting me to teach. And first of all, it's not really, I mean, this cover of the book, I mean, that's Jane Evans. That's her article. I mean, she wrote, this article on split shed Tide Beiderwand. And, I just ran with it. And I was quite aware that there were lots of other things you could do with split shed weaving. I just had never explored it. And I really, people wanted me to teach and, they'd contact me. I'd be like, I'm not going to use my precious vacation time to go to teach in your city, But then I was losing my job. And literally the night that I found out that I was getting outsourced is when I started writing my book. Because I thought, if I'm going to try to make this my career, I am going to really go whole hog and explore this thing and not just teach this one thing I read about in a magazine. And there really just, wasn't a really good comprehensive source to learn this, and nobody had really gone ahead and said, besides that Swedish woman, and I wanted to do it only for shafts. That was really important to me because there's so many 4-shaft weavers that have shaft envy. Oh, that would be so cool to do if I only had, blah, 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 blah. It's the same threading all the way across. There couldn't be anything easier than threading for split shed weaving. It's wonderful. So I started writing. So I worked second shift and I would go to work, and whenever I could squeeze it in, I'd be writing. So most of the book was written at my job because I was getting outsourced. And I would get up in the morning and I'd weave samples. So it was about a year and a half before the book, But that's how it all started, though. It was because I was losing my job.
Well, that's a unique one. I mean, I've always heard all these other, I'm gonna have to put that on the list of a unique reason. And I'm proud of you. It's like, you said, well, by gosh, if I can't go this way, I'll go this way. And good for us because we have this wonderful book. Everybody's ranting about your book in the chat. So it's very popular. So what's next for you? New book? New exhibit coming up? What's next for you?
As far as exhibits, I have no idea. I don't even know. I know one person that wants to show this piece that's on my loom right now, because there's a women's show every year at Lakeland Community College, and she definitely wants it. But I'm so used to making stuff that I don't worry about selling that I really need to start thinking about maybe I need to make stuff that people will actually buy. And then I go ahead and make 21 pieces with dead women's names on them. So, it's hard to get the artists out of me, So, but there's so many things. I have piles of different things I want to try with split shed weaving that I just haven't had time to do yet that, I really want to do. I mean, I want to try split shed corduroy. I've got this idea for combining honeycomb with turned Bedford cord. I think that can be done. I mean, I'm just, and a little bit of stuff with deflected weaves. So I have a lot of things to play with. Too much.
Well, and I happen to know you're going to be in Atlanta in January at the Chattahoochee Handweavers Guild doing a class.
Yeah,
I know you're busy.
I think I've got 11 cities lined up for next year. So,
oh my gosh.
Exciting.
You don't have time to do anything else. All right. Well, we've got questions. Let's ask some questions. Let's see. This is a great question. Rebecca Evans wants to know, do you use a shallow boat shuttle or a stick shuttle to fit in the mini shed?
Most of the things I've done, I use a stick shuttle, just a flat shuttle. Handwoven just came out. I have it with me because it's so cool. It's a combination shed stick shuttle. Handwoven.
Wow. And that's Handwoven?
So cool. Yes. And she also makes these, if you're like one of those people who's crazy for your bobbin shuttles and don't want to do, she makes these super skinny bobbin shuttle. I mean, look how skinny that is.
Wow.
But you got to remember, when you're split shed weaving, you're not throwing the shuttle, you're holding it and you're manipulating it. So you really want to make sure you have something that's long enough, you know, that you can really have something to grip as you're weaving.
Yeah, if somebody could put that email address or her website in the chat, that would be great. Jane Kaplan wants to know, how many EPI do you typically use for split weaving, and how many ends per shed? Also, do you teach online? Your work is fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not teach online because I'm so damn hands-on, and everybody's got a different kinds of loom, and it's just too, I guess I'm too much of a control freak. What was the other question?
How many ends per shed?
16 ends per inch is commonly what I use. What these are is 16 ends per inch, but that lets you move 1/16 of an inch for every change you want to make. So it's not bad. I tend to use really thin warps and then, you know, chubbier wefts. When you're blending colors, embroidery floss isn't the best thing to use. Puffier yarns, like knitting yarns that have a squishability, so that they'll puff out in the areas where there's only one color and compress really well where you don't want to see them. But otherwise, you can do like so many different weave structures and just thread it the same way you would if you were weaving anything in that structure.
Right. Well, this is a good question. This is from Ann O'Neill. How does split shed technique differ from Theo Mormon technique?
Oh, Theo Mormon's inlay. So the design elements in Theo Mormon are not going selvage to selvage.
Okay.
The ground cloth is going selvage to selvage.
This is from Carol Ventura. Hi, Carol. Do you use a cartoon? And you talked about that. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, right?
Almost always. These are the only ones I didn't use a cartoon on.
Okay.
Or if it's warp based where you can't see through, I will either use a cartoon that's like what do you call it? Like a clear vinyl cartoon that flips up over it, or embroidery markers. But generally I use a cartoon, and I have a YouTube video that shows the cartoon. That's also a Jane Evans method. And it's a wonderful way to use a cartoon for people who are on a floor loom. You draw it on cloth so it doesn't wrinkle. I mean, it never wrinkles and it always stays flat, no matter how hard you beat. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I was trying to find it in the book while you were talking. I can't, but it does. You talk about where to see that in the book, and it is a unique way of doing a cartoon. It's not like you just slide a piece of paper in there and follow it. It's really part of the whole weaving system. So I encourage you all to check that out. How big are the pieces of the Saori triptych? Very cool. That's from Mary Holm. And I think you talked about how big they are, right?
Well, they're, I don't know, about 14 and a half, 15 inches.
2 heads wide, 2.5 heads wide. Carol Ventura just said, I just ordered it. I know everybody is online going, how do we get the book? How do we get the book?
And just go to my website.
Yeah,
you just Deborah Silver Studio. That's the website.
There you go. And it's quick. She gets it to you like that. So it doesn't take very long. This is from Sherry Sullivan. Sorry, Sherry, if I'm saying your name wrong. She says, I'm so excited. I've been trying to figure out how to do some design like I've done in glass, and this may be the answer. I'm a new weaver, rigid heddle, but I bought a 4-shaft loom recently, and I'm trying to figure out how to warp it. So my question, I see you're teaching in my area next spring. How much experience do I need to have? Good question.
You need to know how to warp your loom and weave a simple 4-shaft, anything 4-shaft. If you don't you need to know how to read a simple draft. Nothing complicated. There's really nothing complicated about this.
And get her book.
Basically, to make that middle layer, you're using 2 feet. So one foot's going down all the way to raise it up all the way like normal. The other foot's just raising it up halfway so that you can go in and out of that middle layer. If you have like a counter march loom like I use, you're starting everything, that's the default would be where that middle layer is, and the other shafts are going up and down.
Susie, hey Susie, Sari, what looms do you use to create your work?
So I have a counter march loom, which is the only loom I've had, since I got out of college. And it was 4 shaft and I made it 8 shaft. Then I started doing split shed weaving and I got rid of 4 shafts because they were just getting in the way. I did finally, about a year and a half ago, pick up an 8 shaft Leclerc jack loom, which I still haven't used yet because I want to show people that there's applications with block weaving that you can fit split shed weaving into if you wanted to do a block weave with just one area that had an image in it. And I'll get to that eventually, like everything else.
But you can use almost any loom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's funny is it's actually a disadvantage to use like a computer loom because computer looms always lift up all the way. So you actually have to, for those kind of looms, you still have to use the same technique that the table loomers use, which is you raise up the middle and the upper shafts all the way, and then you would program another one where only the upper shafts are supposed to be up. And in the meantime, you're putting a wooden spacer in there so that when those other shafts fall down, that wooden spacer is keeping it up in that halfway up position. That's how you would do it on a table loom.
Yeah, I think you do a nice job in the book addressing table versus floor versus jack versus counter march. So it was nice reading all of that, is to see, and it kind of helps you understand the whole process through that technique. Alice Schlein, hi Alice, asked, this is life-changing. Thanks for writing it.
Wow, thank you, Alice. I have your book.
There you go. She said your image, oh, this is from Deborah Pringle. Your images are very painterly. Do you draw or paint the image and then weave it? And we've already answered that one. So Samantha Irwin, were there any fun ways you implemented your weaving or experience with that in your STEAM focused career?
Oh, no. They're totally separate.
Okay, so much for that question.
But it was fun going into school, and you learn about binary numbers, and it's like, oh, this, because you're a weaver, it's like, oh, this makes perfect sense. A bit is 2 shafts, a bite is 4 shafts. You have 16 different possibilities, and if you're a weaver, that means you have 14 possibilities because you can never have everything up or everything all the way down. And before you know it, you're explaining to the guys, because it's all guys, how the looms are the first computers and the whole punch card thing. So yeah, it was interesting.
She also wants to know about that skinny shuttle again, and we have posted the handy woman. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to be able to, somebody posted something and I can't see it in the chat. Something about whoever posted that about the handy woman has a blank story. Put that in the question if you would. It's MS initials, because I can't read it, so I want to find out what it is. But Mandy has also posted the email address, the website address for Handy Woman Shop.
Oh, thank you.
And she's going to have a run on shuttles now, I can tell. Sherry said, yippee, I just bought the book. It's a Dorset loom.
Thank you.
You got all these people buying your book now. You're going to run out.
No, I won't. You have to see the pile of books on the ground behind me.
Somebody else asked about the 4-season bag was woven on 4 shafts. How? And that's more than I think we can address in this session today. But Kathleen,
look at my YouTube video, because that shows me blending colors. And
yeah, if y'all want to see this, she has a great video. You can go to her website and it'll connect you to it. And it explains so much. And if you do want to go further, I do encourage you to get the book. I've just been reading it lately, and it's like a lot of ahas after I watch it, read it for a while. So, Deborah, thank you so much for being on here today. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. This was terrific.
And I'm so excited about your book, and I look forward to seeing you in January at my guild. And I do want to thank the Des Moines Weavers and Spinners Guild. Thank you guys so much again for sponsoring Textiles Tea, and especially sponsoring Deborah. We appreciate when the guilds do that. It's a wonderful.
And you know what? I had a lot of guilds that wanted me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
If you would like to sponsor an episode of Textiles and Tea, or your business or your guild, please go to our website at weavespindye.org, and you can get all the information about sponsoring. We are starting to book sponsorships through the new year, so we have plenty of spaces available. We also want to thank everybody for when you donate money, when you join, when you sponsor, all that money goes to programs like last week's Spinning and Week. That helps make that happen. Spinning and Weaving Week last week. The different programs that we do throughout the year, those are all helped through your donations, either by donating, being a member, or sponsoring Textiles and Tea. So thank you all so much. And we are still on our quest to have $100 donations by our 100th episode, which will be November the 29th. We are just below 50%. We're struggling to get up there. I know we're going to make it. So come join the fun and help us get to 100 by November the 29th. We'd appreciate it. We also want to thank everybody. Speaking of Spinning and Weaving Week, we want to thank everybody that participated last week. It was such a week. If you didn't find something you liked, you just didn't look hard enough. It was great. We had some wonderful artists that gave us studio tours. We had thread talks. We had art sparks. And the vendors were wonderful. And many of the vendor specials are still going on if you haven't been able to check into that. And remember, you can still watch any of the episodes from Spinning and Weaving Week if you've signed up. And actually, you still can sign up. Those are available for 90 days. So you can go back and watch them again, or if you missed something, they're all recorded and available, as well as Textiles and Tea. You can watch Textiles and Tea on Facebook, and you can also watch it on YouTube. And if you do like watching YouTube better, I encourage you to subscribe. Then you'll get a notice when a new one has been uploaded. I want to thank everybody for being here this week. It was nice to have everybody back to normal this week. And next week, we have Deborah Chandler. Those of you of a certain weaving age probably learned how to weave with Deborah Chandler's book. When I was in college, that was one of our textbooks. So I'm excited to have Deborah next week. I hope you all have a lovely week. Thank you again, Deborah Silver. I can't wait to start doing some split shed weaving. Good night, and I'll see you all next week. Happy tea.